Welcome, Secretary. We are on Chapter 7, Management of Short-Term Tenancies by the Lands Department in Report number 74 of the Director of Audit. Welcome, Secretary. This session is different from our ordinary public hearings. We expect short questions and short answers. Report 74 is about what happened in the past and also problems identified. We've invited you to this meeting because you have accepted all the recommendations from the Director of Audit, and we'd like to hear from you how you're going to implement the recommendations contained in Chapter 7 of the Director of Audit's report. Now, we have Miss Tanya Chen and Mr. Stephen Ho, who are lead members for this chapter. I give the floor to Tanya first. Is the Secretary going to deliver opening speech? Yes, since you already got the speaking notes, I'll be brief. We are grateful to the Director of Audit for his review of the management of short-term tenancies by the Lands Department. We agree with the observations of the audit, and we will implement their recommendations. SST short-term tenancy is an important tool in land management. It will help us to make good use of our land resources. For a land that have yet to have permanent use, SST can be used in the community in an effective manner. Now, for SSTs, we pay particular attention to this aspect. We want the system to be straightforward, a simple and efficient one. The Development Bureau launched in February 2019 a funding scheme to support the use of vacant government sites by NGOs. In the paper, we said 8 has been approved, but as of now, we have approved 11 applications. So the scheme is progressing well. In light of the recommendations by audit, we will closely monitor the implementation of the scheme and review it from time to time. The report has pointed out that in the management of SSTs, the Land Department has room for improvement in the management and handling and processing of some of the cases. Now, we're going to work hard to improve in these aspects. And now give the floor to the Director of Lands to explain to you how the recommendations will be implemented. Thank you. As said by the Secretary, the Lands Department is very actively following up on the recommendations in the audit report. After we've reviewed our instructions, guidelines, and mechanism, then in January and May, respectively, we issued revised guidelines to our district land officers to make improvements in the approval of SSST applications. The new guidelines require DLOs to verify whether the applicant has the relevant capacities to enter into an SST. For instance, is it an incorporated company? And for policy or applications issued before the policy, we would inform the applicants as soon as possible to avoid unnecessary delays and to enhance our efficiency. And in monitoring the compliance with lease terms, we will tighten our enforcement arrangement for terms involving public safety. During the prescribed period, the applicant has to provide the necessary document and seek the relevant approval, such as a safety scheme and fire safety certificates, etc. If the tenant fails to comply with the terms, the tenancy will be terminated unless, with good justifications and support from the relevant department, otherwise there will be no renewal. And then the DLOs will have to inspect these SSTs every 5 years. And then they should have a scheme for all the terms to be fulfilled. And as for management of vacant government lands, the Lands Department has amended and supplemented the existing guidelines for management of idle government lands to see whether the site is suitable for SSTs. We've also asked the DLOs to inspect and review whether these sites are suitable for SSTs. In dealing with SST applications, the department responsible the bureau responsible for the future permanent use of the site must be consulted so that we can make an informed decision. And as for lists of vacant government sites that can be used by NGOs, we are going to improve our geo-info map to provide more comprehensive land use information, including the topography, whether there is vegetation, whether there is any vehicular and or pedestrian access for consideration by people who are interested. The Lands Department has also set up an internal working group to follow up on all the recommendations contained in the audit report. In the coming few months, we are going to monitor the progress of these cases until their completion. The working group will also carry out an in-depth review of our SST management system. Now, we are going to introduce the following improvement measures. For processing SST application time, we will set up targets, and then we will require the reporting of such information to senior officials. And then for the charge of a deposit and also SSTs approved directly, we will have to inform the relevant bureau departments to see whether information related to these tenants should be sought on a regular basis. And then we can decide whether the SST should be renewed. The Lands Department expects that the internal review can be completed within 6 months by the working group for implementation. The Lands Department will upgrade our information system of SST so that we can have more comprehensive data, a more comprehensive database, and work flow and analysis and reporting function so as to improve our management of SSTs. Now, if possible, we would like to complete this work in 3 years. I'm grateful to the Audit Department for giving us valuable suggestion. The colleagues of the Lands Department will actively follow up on these recommendations to ensure that they can be properly implemented. Thank you, Chairman. Ms. Tanya Chen. Thank you. How much time do we have? We have to end by 1 p.m. So we have to share the time. I'll be very brief. I'd like to follow up on the following. Honestly speaking, some I have not read the replies in great details. We have Gen 1 and Gen 2. Gen 1 is on information of SSTs and also use of sites by NGOs, and also financial support and agreements will be signed, and there are conditions to comply with. including submission of reports and progress reports, etc. Of course, we have also got Gen 2. I'm more interested in the cases. Table 4. I understand these are profitable organizations. Para 2.12. According to Lands Department guidelines, only structures of a temporary nature should be permitted on an STT site to facilitate clearance upon termination of the tenancy agreement. The cost of removing structures erected on an STT site is taken into account in calculating the amount of deposit demanded from the tenants at the time a tenancy agreement is signed. According to Lands Department guidelines, for STTs granted to non-profit making or charitable organizations, the requirement to pay the deposit is waived. The director said just now that the department would consider abolishing the requirement for non-profit making or charitable organizations to pay a deposit. Now we have got photos 2, 3, and 4 here. We have got temporary structures erected on site under STTB and STTC. I think the two structures are rather different in terms of their temporary nature. Of course, you can say that anything that can be demolished is just temporary, but it appears that the two structures are rather different in their design and complexity. The structure in STTB is rather elaborate. So will you supervise more closely, and will the tenants be required to remove the structure? If it is the government's work, then we're talking about taxpayers' money. So when can you ensure that a rather complex structure will not be erected on an STT site? Well, non-profit making or charitable organizations may have some financial pressure, and it is appropriate to waive the deposit. Ms. Chen asked whether the organization has the responsibility to remove the structure. The answer is yes. We only waive the deposit, and if the non-profit making organization doesn't remove the structure, we will do it for it, but then we will charge it for the cost.
And Ms. Tanya Chan's other question, I would not like to comment on the structure in photograph 3. Now we are going by the MIC construction model. So if a structure is 2 stories, the demolition or clearance is not that difficult. So that will not pose great risk. You're talking about the modular housing? Yes, that's correct. For our quarantine facilities, we are also adopting the MIC approach, so their clearance is relatively simple. Mr. Ho, please. Thank you, Chairman. Let me ask him in another way. In case 9, for government vacant sites, it's not easy to use them. It says that the religious body is applying for the use of A1, A2, site A1, 2, and 3. And the FHB said that, well, the site A1 has been reserved for hospital, building a hospital. And they made the application in 2017, or 2010, which was declined. But then in 2013, the application was declined. And in 2017, sites A A and A1 have been turned into a temporary football pitch, and obviously that those don't come under the FHB. Why were you not giving the land to the religious body because it was under the FHB? But then later on, the reason for not granting the land has changed. So how was the communication among the different government departments or bureaus? How will you do it in the future? In Hong Shui Kiu, Yunnan South and Kamtun, Kamtin and Northeast NT, planning has been done. And then the government, if the government has planned to use for those sites, then they would not be used for any other purpose. But then the government has been planning on the land for 7 to 8 years, but now the sites still lie idle. But if at the beginning you would have granted STTs to these bodies, then the land would have been put into better use. So what lessons has the government learned from these cases? Thank you, Mr. Ho. We agree to the Audit Commission's observations. Case 9 reveals some lessons for us to learn. We have talked to the hospital authority. They said that they have plans to develop the site. And we've also talked to the applicant. We told them, if we told them that we could only grant you the land for 2.5 years instead of 3 years, maybe the applicant would still be willing to take up the land. But this did not happen, and as a result, the application was rejected. Right now, the site has been used for recreation purpose. In this regard, we will boost internal communication. Say if a department or bureau says that they have plans to use the site, then we will ask them when, because plans are subject to changes all the time. Maybe in the course of applying for funding, the timetable may change. So we should feed in the latest information into the policy decision-making process. I think the government still has to improve on its system. For, say, the agri-park, application has been pending for 2 to 3 years. In government vacant sites, you may grant an STT to a certain party for 3 years. That may be the right decision to make now. I think you can enhance the efficiency in your decision-making process. So can Mr. Wong review the whole process, please? Yes, we are willing to conduct a review on that. I suggest that they give us the details in the written reply. I hope that they can give us a timetable and not just tell us here that they will follow up. Yes, I am happy to provide a written detailed response, including a timetable. We will follow up with the clearance sheets. For every recommendation made by the Director of Audit, we will track the progress. And we will make sure that the recommendation is really implemented before we stop our work. So please give us the timetable. Tanya. Chairman, my question will be very brief. The administration has given us a reply on enhancement of the system. Really, I have aspirations for that. The Lands Department doesn't have a large establishment, but their work portfolio is very wide, and there are different cases to be handled. So if you can devise a good system or app, then that can help with your staff members in their work and enhance information communication. You said that the system enhancement work can be completed within 3 years. Will the extra expenditure be incurred? I think we should give you the money for doing that. I'm interested in this part of your work. I think that would help. Do you have any specific plans for us? Do you have details for us? Can you expedite your work? Thank you, Ms. Chan, for your understanding of the work on the pressure faced by the Lands Department. The Bureau supports this initiative. We should leverage on the use of technology. That should be our direction. There are 2 points to make. The Audit Commission mentioned about the management information system, and that is how this information system can help the management make decisions. For example, there are some inadequacies identified for inspection work. Well, if record of an updated inspection is input into it, the old records will be cleared. And what about the warning letters that we issued that do not show up in the system, and that is contained only in the old file, so it takes time to retrieve the old files. So the existing system was designed in 2009. So in terms of information management system, we will work very hard. And the Lands Department is also studying into it. We hope that the results will be available in a few months. It will not be less than $30 million. So we have to come to seek funding support from the LegCo on that project. About this part, little is mentioned about the Audit Commission report, and that is on law enforcement. At the Lands Department in NT West, we have tried this out. If we can use drones and take 3D photos through computer programs, we can match the photos against the real situation. We can actually identify an extra story built on a structure which was not shown in our system. The system is really targeting an illegal occupation of government land, but now we think that that system can also cover STTs, especially for sites on STTs with structures. So colleagues will know that there has been an irregularity there, so that they can target to work on this irregularity, and the process can be made more efficient and smooth. Now, case 1. The case reviews certain problems. Applicant A made an application for a site for a garden, including a vehicular access, and in 2020, the slope works have not been completed. So it's been some 17 years on. Maybe farmers face the same situation and apply for use of government land. So there has been a lot of tangling between the government and the applicant. And maybe the government may impose additional conditions on the applicant, and then the applicant has to submit another document. So there are a lot of to and fro's, and as a result, the process lasts for as long as 17 years. So does it mean that the government has not been doing a good enough job in such instructions and records? And the applicant in this case seems to be quite well off, so he can really bargain with the government. But for other applicants, they might not be so well resourced to deal with the government. For small farmers, they might have to face financial pressure in dealing with the government. They might even give up the application. So my question for the government is that whenever you have demands on the applicant, please put them on record to show that your demands are really reasonable. Sometimes there are no records. So everything seems to be done verbally in some cases. The government may impose unreasonable demands on the applicant, and sometimes the applicant will also use this as an excuse of not paying government certain charges which are due, and so on and so forth. So would you be doing more to keep clear records of all these back and forths of documents? I totally agree with Mr. Ho. Like I said to Ms. Tanya Chan, now I have files and records, and sometimes the records may not be complete. But then if we have to retrieve the complete files, it will be very time consumer. Now in the future information system, we would be seeing a lot of enhancements. The controlling officer and other parties will have the records set clearly before them in the computer system. At construction sites, we also would like the system to be paperless. Now, if you use IT system, there are boxes which should be ticked. And if a tick is not put in it, maybe the computer system will not be able to move forward. So then that will help. The existing system was designed some 10 years ago, so the system has to be enhanced and overhauled. So if we come to you to seek funding, I hope that you can support us. My last supplementary questions, whether it's case 1 or case 9, apart from the Lands Department and Development Bureau, other government departments are also involved. According to my experience, some departments have been very slow in responding to the cases, and as a result, we have seen what's happening similar to case 1. The EPD or the EDB or AFCD are involved, and the communication system among these departments is also very backward. So how can the Bureau improve on the system so that the relevant replies can be made to the Lands Department for speedier vetting? Well, in the future system, we will be able to trace exactly when the other government departments give us a reply. Sometimes the Lands Department asks the applicant to approach a certain government department. You should provide a one-stop service, shouldn't you? You should enhance communication among government departments. And it's better that you communicate among yourselves rather than asking the applicant to go to each individual department separately. Thank you, Secretary and Director. You should give us a written reply setting out your roadmap and timetable as to when and how you will implement the recommendations of the Chapter 7 of Audit Report 74. And if you have other questions, we will write to you. I hope that in the future there will be more such sessions in the form of short questions and short answers. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.